The massive view screen on the bridge of the USS Dauntless showed nothing but stars. Lieutenant Commander Ellie Mason sat at her station, eyes fixed on the readings that scrolled across her monitor. Something wasn't right. The numbers flickered, and jumped in ways she had never seen before. "These quantum readings are strange," she said, mostly to herself. Beside her, Science Officer Peter Walsh leaned over to look. His face grew serious as he studied the data. "I've never seen patterns like this, not even during the battle 3 weeks ago." Ellie nodded. It had been exactly 3 weeks since their encounter with the Rimiki mothership. The battle had been fierce, and the Dauntless had barely survived. Now they were stuck on patrol duty, monitoring this empty sector of space where nothing was supposed to happen. Until now. "The readings are getting stronger," Ellie said. She tapped her screen, bringing up a 3-dimensional map of the area. A red spot pulsed at the edge of the Frairen defensive perimeter. "Right where we defeated the Rimiki fleet." Peter straightened up. "Captain Garrett needs to see this right away." Ellie pressed her comm badge. "Lieutenant Commander Mason to Captain Garrett." "Sir, we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." Captain Alan Garrett arrived on the bridge moments later. He was a tall man with graying hair at his temples and the kind of face that rarely showed fear. Today, as he studied the readings on Ellie's screen, a small crease formed between his eyebrows. "How long has this been happening?" he asked. "The first anomalies appeared about 2 hours ago," Ellie explained. "They were so small I thought they might be sensor ghosts. But they've been growing steadily. Whatever it is, it's getting bigger." The turbo lift doors slid open, and Chief Engineer Samantha Cole rushed onto the bridge. Her uniform was stained with coolant fluid, and her dark hair was coming loose from its ponytail. She must have run all the way from engineering. "Captain," she said, slightly out of breath. "I came as soon as I saw the alerts. It's a breach." The bridge fell silent. "A breach?" Captain Garrett repeated. "You mean in space-time?" Sam nodded. "The quantum barrier between our dimension and others is weakening. The readings match what our scientists theorized would happen if the barrier was damaged." She moved to Ellie's station and pulled up additional data on the screen. "See these energy signatures? Classic signs of dimensional instability." "Could this be natural?" Peter asked. Sam shook her head. "No way. This is exactly where we fired those experimental quantum torpedoes at the Rimiki flagship. I warned Command that those weapons hadn't been properly tested. They were desperate to stop the Rimiki advance, but I said there might be side effects." She looked at Captain Garrett. "Looks like I was right." Communications Officer Noah Rodriguez spoke up from his station. "Sir, we're receiving an incoming transmission from Frairen High Command. It's Ambassador Wright. Priority 1. "On screen," Garrett ordered, straightening his uniform. The view screen changed from stars to the face of Ambassador Kayla Wright. Even though she was human, Ambassador Wright had spent so many years among the Frairen that she had adopted many of their mannerisms. Her face showed little emotion, but her eyes were intense. "Captain Garrett," she said, "I assume you've detected the anomaly." "Yes, Ambassador. My chief engineer believes it's a breach in the dimensional barrier, possibly caused by the weapons we used against the Rimiki." Ambassador Wright nodded. "The Frairen scientists have confirmed this assessment, but it's worse than you think. This is what they call a wave breach." Ellie felt a chill run down her spine. She had read theoretical papers about wave breaches during her advanced studies at the Academy. If those theories were correct, they were in serious trouble. "For those of us who aren't familiar with the term," Captain Garrett said, "could you explain what a wave breach is?" "It's not just one breach," Ambassador Wright explained. "It's the first of many. Like waves on an ocean, each one stronger than the last. This first breach is small, but it will grow, and when it collapses, it will create ripples in space-time that will cause more breaches to form. And each new breach," Ellie began, "will be larger and last longer than the one before it," Ambassador Wright finished. "Eventually, the breaches will become stable enough to allow large objects to pass through." Captain Garrett's face darkened. "Like Rimiki ships." "Exactly. The Rimiki have been trying to enter our dimension for centuries. The Frairen have kept them at bay. But these breaches will give them exactly what they want, a way in. Sam stepped forward. Can we close the breach? Not this one. Ambassador, Wright said. It's too late. But we might be able to prevent the next waves if we act quickly. I'm sending coordinates for Frairen's Central Command. The Dauntless is requested to proceed there immediately for an emergency council meeting. Captain Garrett nodded. We'll set course right away. One more thing, Captain, Ambassador Wright added. The Frairen are concerned. They believe the Rimiki may have planned this all along, that the attack 3 weeks ago was meant to fail, designed to make us use the quantum torpedoes in exactly that location. You mean we were manipulated into creating the breach ourselves? Peter asked. Ambassador, Wright's expression remained neutral, but her voice carried a hint of worry. It is a possibility we cannot ignore. The Rimiki are an ancient race, far older than humans or even the Frairen. Their understanding of dimensional physics exceeds our own. If that's true, Ellie said, then they'll be ready to exploit these breaches as soon as they form. Which is why we must act quickly, Ambassador Wright replied. Right out. The view screen returned to the view of stars, but now everyone on the bridge stared at the small red dot on Ellie's monitor. Navigation, Captain Garrett said. Set course. For Frairen Central Command maximum warp. He turned to Ellie. Lieutenant Commander Mason, I want continuous monitoring of that breach. If anything changes, anything at all, I want to know immediately. Yes, sir, Ellie replied. As the Dauntless prepared to jump to warp speed, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The Rimiki had been planning this for a very long time, and now, after centuries of trying, they had found their way through. The breach was just the beginning. The observation deck of Frairen Central Command stretched in a wide arc, with tall windows that looked out at the gas giant Heron V. The massive planet filled the view, its swirling storms of orange, red, and gold moving slowly across its surface. Normally, Ellie would have found the sight beautiful. Today, she barely noticed it. The deck had been turned into a meeting room. A large round table sat in the center, surrounded by representatives from 12 different species. Captain Garrett stood near one end beside Ambassador Wright. Ellie sat a few seats away next to Science Officer Peter Walsh. The noise level in the room was rising. Several delegates were speaking at once, their voices overlapping. One at a time, please, Ambassador, Wright said. Though she didn't raise her voice, something in her tone made everyone quiet down. We must approach this crisis with calm and order. A tall Frairen with pale blue skin stood up. The breach has grown by 17% since it was first detected. Our scientists predict it will collapse within 8 hours, triggering the second wave. And how large will the second breach be? Asked a representative from the Cygnus Coalition. Approximately twice the size of the first, replied the Frairen. Large enough for small scout ships to pass through. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Dr. Vincent Green, the scientific advisor from the Dauntless, tapped on a small device. A holographic display appeared above the center of the table. It showed a simulation of the breach, pulsing with red energy. Then it collapsed and 3 new breaches formed, each one larger than the original. Each wave will be stronger than the last, Dr. Green explained. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed his concern. By the 5th wave, the breaches will be stable enough for large vessels to pass through. By the 7th wave, an entire fleet could enter our dimension. How many waves before the barrier between dimensions fails completely? Asked a representative from Earth. Dr. Green hesitated. We don't know for certain, but our models suggest somewhere between 12 and 15 waves. A heavy silence fell over the room. Admiral Lisa Martinez from Earth Fleet Command stood up. She was a short woman with a commanding presence. We can't just sit here and count waves, we need to act now. What do you propose? Asked the Frairen representative. A joint task force, Admiral Martinez replied. The Frairen have the dimensional technology. Earth has the firepower. Together we might be able to prevent the later waves from forming. Preventing the waves is one approach, Ambassador Wright said. But there might be another solution. She nodded to an aide who brought her a small metal case. The room went quiet as Ambassador Wright opened the case and removed a strange device. It was roughly the size of a dinner plate, circular with a complex pattern of symbols around its edge. Some of the symbols glowed with a faint blue light. This artifact was discovered 3 solar cycles ago in the Tannhauser Nebula, she explained. Our archaeologists found it in the ruins of an ancient outpost. The outpost had markings from both Frairen and Rimiki civilizations. She placed the device on the table. A holographic display appeared above it, showing a 3-dimensional map of what looked like star systems. We believe this device, which we call the Void Cipher, was created as a key of sorts, Ambassador Wright continued. A key that can lock the dimensional barriers and prevent breaches from forming. If such a device exists, why haven't the Frairen used it before now? Asked a delegate from the Arcturus Confederation, his tone suspicious. Because we didn't know how to activate it, Ambassador Wright replied. The Frairen have spent years studying it without success. Until 3 weeks ago, when we captured data from the destroyed Rimiki vessels. She turned to Ensign Ryan Cooper, who sat near Captain Garrett. He was young, with an eager expression that made him look even younger. But Ellie knew that Cooper had distinguished himself during the battle against the Rimiki. He had managed to hack into one of their communication systems just before it was destroyed. Ensign Cooper, please share what you discovered, Ambassador Wright said. Cooper stood up, looking nervous to be addressing such an important gathering. During the battle, I intercepted fragments of Rimiki data transmissions. Most of it was encrypted, but there were references to something they called the Void Cipher. They described it as a key to the path between worlds. He gestured to the device on the table. The symbols match those found on the artifact. The Rimiki weren't just trying to invade, Captain Garrett said, understanding dawning on his face. They were looking for this device. Ambassador Wright nodded. We believe so. The question is why. Is it a weapon they wish to possess? Or something they fear? Does it matter? Admiral Martinez asked. If this thing can stop the breaches, we need to use it. It's not that simple, Dr. Green said. Based on our preliminary analysis, the Void Cipher needs to be activated at the primary breach point. Someone would need to take it directly to the breach. The room fell silent as everyone considered what that meant. The breach was unstable, surrounded by dangerous quantum energies. Getting close to it would be risky enough. Deploying an untested ancient device at the center of the breach would be even more dangerous. The Dauntless will take it, Captain, Garrett said, breaking the silence. All eyes turned to him. Are you sure, Captain? Ambassador Wright asked quietly. Garrett nodded. My ship has the most experience with both the Rimiki and quantum phenomena. We've also got the best science team to figure out how to activate the cipher. He looked at Cooper. And we have the only person who successfully interpreted Rimiki data. Admiral Martinez studied Captain Garrett for a moment, then nodded. I'll assign 3 Frairen cruisers to accompany you. They'll provide cover while you deploy the device. The mission parameters will need to be precise, the Frairen representative said. The cipher must be activated at the exact moment the next breach reaches its maximum expansion. Miss that window, and it won't work. How long do we have? Ellie asked. Dr. Green checked his data pad. The current breach will collapse in approximately 7 hours. The second wave will form almost immediately after. Then we need to move quickly, Captain Garrett said. He turned to his crew members. Let's get back to the Dauntless and prepare for departure. As they left the observation deck, Ellie walked beside Cooper. You've got your work cut out for you, Ensign. You need to figure out how to activate an ancient alien device that nobody has been able to understand for years. Cooper gave her a nervous smile. No pressure, right? Ellie squeezed his shoulder. The captain wouldn't have volunteered us if he didn't think we could do it. Behind them, through the large windows, the storms on Heron 5 continued their slow, endless dance. Soon, a different kind of storm would break across this sector of space, and they would be right in the middle of it. The USS Dauntless moved silently through space, flanked by 3 Frairen cruisers. Their sleek blue-silver hulls gleamed in the distant starlight. From the bridge, Captain Garrett watched the small fleet on the main view screen. "Time to the breach point?" he asked. 45 minutes, sir," replied Lieutenant Amy West from the navigation station. Garrett nodded and tapped his comm badge. "Garrett to engineering. Status report, Chief." Chief Engineer Samantha Cole's voice came through clearly. "Shield modifications are at 90%, Captain. We're reinforcing them to handle the quantum fluctuations near the breach." "And the void cipher?" "Dr. Green and Ensign Cooper are still working on it. I've never seen anything like it, sir. The technology is beyond anything we have." Garrett frowned slightly. "We're running out of time, Sam. Make sure they understand that." "They know, sir. Cooper hasn't left the lab since we came back from Frairen Command. Keep me updated. Garrett out." The captain turned to Ellie, who was monitoring the quantum readings at her station. "Lieutenant Commander, what are we facing out there?" Ellie adjusted her screen so Garrett could see it. "The first breach has almost reached its collapse point. Energy levels are rising steadily." She pointed to a series of fluctuating lines on her display. "We're already detecting the formation patterns of the second wave. It's going to be much larger than the first." "Will we be able to get close enough to deploy the cipher?" Ellie hesitated. "With the modified shields, maybe, but it's going to be rough." Captain Garrett walked to the center of the bridge and addressed his crew. "I need everyone at their best. We're about to attempt something that's never been done before. The plan is simple but dangerous. We'll approach the breach point as the second wave forms. Once we're in position, we'll use the void cipher to create a resonance field that should stabilize the dimensional barriers." He looked around at their faces. Some showed fear, others determination. "The Frairen ships will maintain a defensive perimeter around us while we work. If we succeed, we prevent a full-scale Rimiki invasion. If we fail—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what was at stake. "Any questions?" he asked. Noah Rodriguez raised his hand. "Sir, have we established communication protocols with the Frairen vessels?" "Ambassador Wright is handling that personally," Garrett replied. "She set up a direct link from her station to their command ships." As if on cue, Ambassador Wright entered the bridge. She had changed from her diplomatic robes into a standard uniform, though hers had both Earth and Frairen insignia. "Captain," she said with a nod. "The Frairen commanders are standing by. They'll follow your lead." "Thank you, Ambassador." Garrett gestured to an empty station. "You can coordinate from there." Wright took her seat and immediately began working on the communications panel. Garrett's comm badge chirped. "Green to Captain." "Garrett." "Go ahead, Doctor." "Cooper's done it, sir. He's figured out how to activate the cipher. We're bringing it to the bridge now." A few minutes later, Dr. Green and Ensign Cooper arrived. Cooper carried a small case carefully in both hands. He placed it on a clear area near the science station and opened it. Inside was the void cipher, its circular shape now glowing with blue and green lights that pulsed in a steady rhythm. "It's beautiful," Ellie said softly. Cooper nodded. "And incredibly complex. The Rimiki inscriptions were the key. They're not just words, they're activation codes. Each symbol needs to be pressed in a specific sequence." "Will it work?" Garrett asked. Dr. Green adjusted his glasses. "In theory, yes. The cipher will create a resonance field that should counteract the breach energies, but—" He hesitated. "But what, Doctor?" Garrett prompted. "But we need to be much closer to the breach than I initially calculated, almost at the perimeter of the event horizon." A tense silence fell over the bridge. "That close, the quantum energies could tear the ship apart," Ellie said. "We've reinforced the shields," Cooper replied. "They should hold long enough." "Should?" Noah asked. Cooper shrugged. "It's the best we can do with the time we have." "Captain." Garrett considered this for a moment, then nodded. "We proceed as planned. Ensign Cooper, you'll operate the cipher under Dr. Green's supervision. Lieutenant Commander Mason will monitor the breach and tell you exactly when to activate it." "Captain," Science Officer Walsh called from his station, "I'm detecting unusual energy readings ahead." "On screen," Garrett ordered. The view screen shifted to show the space in front of them. At first it looked empty. Then a small point of light appeared, growing rapidly into a swirling vortex of energy. Blue and purple light twisted around a dark center. The first breach is collapsing, Ellie reported, watching her readings. Second wave forming. Now! The vortex on the screen pulsed violently, then collapsed in on itself. For a brief moment, space looked normal again. Then 3 new points of light appeared, growing much faster than the first had. 3 breaches, Peter exclaimed. The models only predicted 1 for the second wave. The process is accelerating, Dr. Green said, his voice tight with concern. We don't have much time. The center breach grew larger than the others, a massive swirling storm in space. And then, through the dark center of the vortex, something began to emerge. Rimiki vessels detected, Noah reported, his voice rising. In alarm. Scout ships coming through the breach. Shields up, Garrett ordered. Red alert. Ambassador Wright, tell the Frairen vessels to take up defensive positions. The lights on the bridge dimmed and red alert panels began to flash. The sound of the alert klaxon filled the air. How many Rimiki ships? Garrett asked. 5 scouts so far, Noah replied. Small vessels, but they're heavily armed. They're scanning us, Ellie reported. They've detected the void cipher. On the screen, the Rimiki scout ships changed course, all of them now heading straight for the Dauntless. They're trying to stop us, Ambassador Wright said. They know what we're attempting to do. The first shots from the Rimiki vessels streaked across space, brilliant beams of red energy that dissipated against the Dauntless's shields. Shields holding at 85%, reported Ellie. 2 Frairen cruisers moved forward, placing themselves between the Dauntless and the incoming Rimiki. Their weapons fired, blue pulses of energy that struck 2 of the scout ships. 1 Rimiki vessel exploded in a flash of light. The other spun away, damaged but still functional. The center breach is still growing, Peter called out, approaching maximum expansion point. Take us in, Lieutenant West, Garrett ordered. Full impulse power. The Dauntless surged forward, heading straight for the massive breach. Behind them, the battle between the Frairen cruisers and Rimiki scouts continued. Ahead, the swirling vortex of the breach grew until it filled the entire view screen. A massive wound in the fabric of space itself. Ensign Cooper opened the case and carefully lifted out the void cipher. Its lights were pulsing faster now, as if it sensed the proximity of the breach. Everyone ready? Captain Garrett asked, looking around at his crew. They all nodded, their faces determined despite the danger. Then let's seal this breach. The Dauntless shuddered as another blast from a Rimiki ship struck its shields. Captain Garrett gripped the arms of his command chair to steady himself. Shields at 60%, Ellie reported, her fingers moving quickly over her console. Through the view screen, the massive breach loomed before them. It was an enormous swirling vortex of energy, with colors that hurt the eyes if you looked at them too long. The ship pushed forward, drawing closer to the dangerous phenomenon. Behind them, the battle raged. 2 Frairen cruisers were engaged, with the Rimiki scout ships, their weapons creating bright flashes in the darkness of space. The 3rd Frairen vessel had taken heavy damage and was hanging back, its blue hull now scarred with black marks. Distance to optimal deployment point? Garrett asked. 2,000 kilometers, Lieutenant West replied. 1 minute at current speed. Ensign Cooper stood near the science station, the void cipher in his hands. The device was pulsing faster, now its lights flashing in complex patterns. Dr. Green stood beside him, monitoring readings on a small handheld scanner. The cipher is reacting to the breach, Dr. Green said. It's like it knows what's happening. A massive explosion flashed on the view screen as one of the Frairen cruisers took a direct hit from 2 Rimiki vessels. Frairen cruiser Solaris is critically damaged, Ambassador Wright reported, her voice tight with concern. They're losing power to their engines. Tell them to fall back, Garrett ordered. We'll continue alone if necessary. Wright nodded and spoke quickly into her comm unit in the Frairen language. Another violent shake rocked the bridge as the Dauntless took a direct hit. Shields at 45%, Ellie called out. Captain, shield integrity will fail if we take many more hits like that. Garrett pressed his comm badge. Bridge to engineering. Sam, we need more power to the shields. Chief Engineer Cole's voice came back, nearly drowned out by the sound of alarms in the background. I'm giving you everything I can, Captain. The quantum energies from the breach are interfering with our systems. A Rimiki ship is on an intercept course, Noah warned. They're trying to ram us. Evasive maneuvers, Garrett ordered. Lieutenant West's hands flew over her controls. The Dauntless swerved sharply to port, narrowly avoiding the Rimiki vessel as it streaked past. They're coming around for another pass, Noah reported. Target their engines and fire, Garrett commanded. The Dauntless's weapons officer fired a quick burst of phaser fire. The beam struck the Rimiki ship's aft section, causing it to spin out of control. Direct hit, the weapons officer announced. Rimiki vessel is disabled. Good work, Garrett said. Now get us back on course for the breach. The ship turned again, heading once more toward the swirling vortex. They were close enough now that the breach filled not just the view screen but seemed to surround them, its energies casting strange, shifting light across the bridge. Something's happening, Peter called from the science station. His voice held a note of alarm. The breach is changing. On the view screen, the center of the vortex darkened. Then slowly, something massive began to emerge. That's not a scout ship, Ellie said, her eyes wide. The object that pushed through the breach dwarfed the scout ships. It was a massive vessel, its surface dark and organic-looking, covered in strange protrusions that might have been weapons. Rimiki Dreadnought, Ambassador Wright whispered. One of their capital ships. Scan it, Garrett ordered. Peter worked his console quickly. Length approximately 3 kilometers. Energy readings off the charts, weapon systems, I can't even identify most of them. This thing could take on our entire fleet. It's changing everything, Dr. Green said urgently. With a ship that size coming through, the breach is stabilizing. We need to act now or we'll lose our chance. Take us in, maximum impulse, Garrett ordered. Ensign Cooper, prepare to deploy the cipher. The Dauntless surged forward, closing the distance to the breach. The Rimiki dreadnought continued to emerge, more and more of its massive hull appearing through the vortex. 1,000 kilometers to deployment point, Lieutenant West announced. The dreadnought has detected us, Noah warned. They're powering weapons. All power to forward shields, Garrett commanded. Cooper checked the void cipher again, its lights now pulsing so rapidly they seemed almost constant. Dr. Green, the deployment sequence is ready. Dr. Green was staring at his readings, his face pale. Wait, something's wrong. He looked up at Cooper. These energy patterns. The resonance field won't form correctly. What are you saying? Cooper asked. The cipher needs to be manually calibrated at the deployment point. Our original plan won't work, Captain Garrett joined them. Explain, Doctor. The energy signature from the breach is different than our simulations predicted, Green said. Someone would need to adjust the cipher's settings in real time during deployment. But that would mean being inside the breach perimeter. Cooper finished. A heavy silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the beeping of instruments and the distant sound of the red alert klaxon. That's a suicide mission, Ellie said quietly. Chief Engineer Cole's voice came over the comm. Captain, I've been monitoring. There might be a way. She paused. If we use a shuttle with modified shields, we could maintain a quantum tether to the main ship. Someone could take the cipher to the deployment point, activate it, and we might be able to pull them back. Might? Garrett asked. It's a slim chance, sir, but it's a chance. Ellie stood up from her station. I'll do it. I'm the most qualified to recognize the correct quantum signatures for deployment. Before Garrett could respond, a brilliant beam of energy shot from the Rimiki dreadnought. It struck the Dauntless with tremendous force, sending everyone staggering. Direct hit, the weapons officer shouted. Shields down to 15%. That changes everything, Ambassador Wright said, steadying herself against her console. The dreadnought will detect and destroy any shuttle before it reaches deployment range. The ship shook again as another, smaller blast struck them. We need another option, Garrett said, looking around the bridge. And we need it now. Ensign Cooper had been quiet, looking down at the void cipher in his hands. Now he looked up. Captain, I have an alternative. All eyes turned to him. The Frairen stealth scout vessel, Cooper said. It has an advanced cloaking system that might get past the Dreadnought's sensors, and I've spent the last 3 weeks studying their systems. I could pilot it. Captain Garrett studied the young ensign's face. You understand what you're volunteering for? Cooper nodded. Yes, sir. After a moment of consideration, Garrett turned to Ambassador Wright. Can you arrange it? She nodded and immediately began speaking into her comm unit. Ellie moved to Cooper's side and gripped his arm. The calculations have to be perfect, Ryan. The tether won't hold if you're off by even a fraction. Cooper gave her a small smile. Then I'll just have to be perfect, won't I? The ship rocked again as another blast from the Dreadnought struck them. 500 kilometers to deployment point, Lieutenant West called out. Captain Garrett placed a hand on Cooper's shoulder. Go. We'll cover you as best we can. Cooper nodded, carefully placing the void cipher back in its case. As he headed for the turbolift, the massive form of the Rimiki dreadnought loomed larger on the view screen, a dark promise of what was to come if they failed. The Frairen scout ship glided silently through space, its sleek form nearly invisible thanks to its advanced cloaking technology. Inside the small cockpit, Ensign Ryan Cooper sat beside Frairen Lieutenant Nexara. The alien officer's blue skin seemed to glow faintly in the dim lighting. Cloaking system at maximum, Nexara reported, her 6-fingered hands moving gracefully over the controls. Rimiki sensors should not detect us. Cooper nodded, his attention focused on the void cipher. He had placed it on a special platform between their seats. The ancient device pulsed with increasing brightness as they drew closer to the breach. How much farther to the deployment zone? Cooper asked. 300 kilometers, Nexara replied. We will reach it in approximately 2 minutes. Through the forward viewport, Cooper could see the dimensional tear in all its terrible beauty. The massive breach swirled with energy, colors shifting from deep purple to electric blue. Beyond the breach, shadowy shapes moved, more Rimiki, ships waiting to invade. The enormous dreadnought was now halfway through the breach, its dark hull seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. In the distance, Cooper could see the Dauntless and the remaining Frairen cruisers engaging the Rimiki scout ships, keeping them away from the scout vessel's path. His comm unit crackled to life. Dauntless to scout vessel, Captain Garrett's voice came through, somewhat distorted by interference from the breach. Status report. On approach to deployment zone, Cooper replied. No sign that the Rimiki have detected us. Be advised, Garrett said. The dreadnought is changing position. You need to deploy now before it moves into your path. Understood, sir. Cooper turned to Nexara. Can we increase speed? The Frairen officer nodded and adjusted the controls. The scout ship surged forward, closing the distance to the deployment zone. Cooper carefully lifted the void cipher from its platform. The device was humming now, vibrating slightly in his hands. Its symbols had begun to glow more intensely, casting strange shadows across the cockpit. Prepare for deployment sequence, he said, both to Nexara and to the Dauntless. Deployment zone in 30 seconds, Nexara reported. Cooper activated the cipher, pressing the symbols in the sequence he had decoded. The device responded immediately, its central section beginning to spin slowly. Cipher active, he reported. Beginning final calibration. But as the device reached full power, something unexpected happened. The symbols on its surface began to rearrange themselves, forming new patterns that Cooper had never seen before. What's happening? Nexara asked. Her large eyes widening, Cooper stared at the shifting patterns. These aren't in the translation matrix I created. The device is changing. The symbols continued to move, glowing brighter. Then suddenly, the center of the cipher opened like an iris, revealing a small projection unit. A holographic display appeared above the device, floating in the air between Cooper and Nexara. It's a message, Cooper whispered. The hologram showed a series of images, first the Frairen homeworld, then Earth, followed by a dozen other inhabited systems. Then the image shifted to show the Rimiki, not as invaders, but as refugees. Their world was being consumed by something dark and formless. Captain, Cooper called urgently through his comm. The cipher is showing us something important. The Rimiki aren't invaders, they're refugees. They're running from something that destroyed their dimension. What are you talking about, Ensign? Garrett's voice came back confused. The void. Cipher isn't just a key to close the breach, Cooper explained, his voice rising with excitement and fear. It's a recording device. A warning. The Rimiki are fleeing from some kind of entity, something that consumed their dimension. As Cooper spoke, the hologram showed the dark force moving through space, consuming everything in its path. Stars winked out as it passed. Planets crumbled. And behind it all, the Rimiki fled in great arcs, barely staying ahead of the darkness. Deployment. Zone reached, Nexara announced, pulling Cooper back to their immediate situation. Outside the viewport, the breach loomed enormous now, filling their entire field of vision. The dreadnought had almost completely emerged, its massive weapon systems coming online. We still need to close the breach, Cooper said, but we need to warn the Rimiki why we're doing it. They need to know we understand. Nexara reached out and touched his arm. There is a way. The scout ship has a communication system that can broadcast on Rimiki frequencies. If you give me the right codes. Cooper quickly tapped a series of commands into his console, transferring the Rimiki communication codes he had decoded weeks ago. There, can you send them the message from the cipher? Nexara nodded and began working at her station. Broadcasting, now. For a long moment, nothing happened. The dreadnought continued to emerge from the breach. Then suddenly it stopped. They've received our message, Nexara said. They're responding. A transmission came through, filled with the strange clicking language of the Rimiki. Cooper's translation program worked quickly, converting it to English. They say, "Close the breach. Save your dimension. We will find another way." Nexara looked at Cooper with surprise. They're retreating back through the breach. On the main viewer, they could see the massive dreadnought slowly reversing course, withdrawing back into the dimensional tear. The smaller Rimiki vessels were breaking off their attack on the Dauntless and the Frairen cruisers. Now, Ensign, Captain Garrett's voice came through the comm. Deploy the cipher while they're withdrawing. Cooper placed the void cipher on the deployment platform and activated the final sequence. The device's spinning center accelerated, and the glowing symbols brightened until they were almost painful to look at. Cipher deployed, Cooper reported. Activation sequence complete. A beam of brilliant blue-white energy shot from the cipher, striking the center of the breach. The energy spread out, forming a web that covered the entire dimensional tear. The breach began to pulse, then to shrink. But as the breach collapsed, Cooper caught a glimpse of what lay beyond the retreating Rimiki fleet. A darkness that consumed, stars moving with purpose and ancient malevolence. Captain, he called through the comm. The breach is closing, but there's something else out there. Something following the Rimiki. I think it's noticed us. The scout ship shuddered as the energy from the collapsing breach washed over them. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. Quantum, tether holding, Nexara reported, her voice tense. But not for long. We need to withdraw now. She engaged the engines, and the scout ship turned away from the rapidly shrinking breach. Behind them, the dimensional tear collapsed with a final flash of energy, sending a shockwave that rocked the small vessel. Tether still holding, Nexara said. We're clear. Cooper transmitted the cipher's message to both the Dauntless and Frairen. Command. Captain, we've sealed this breach. But the Rimiki weren't the real enemy. They were the warning. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Captain Garrett and Ambassador Wright watched as the final Rimiki ships retreated or were destroyed. The breaches had closed completely, leaving only empty space where the dimensional tiers had been. So it begins, Ambassador Wright said quietly. The true war. Captain Garrett nodded grimly. Have Dr. Green analyze every bit of data from the cipher and get me Earth Fleet Command. They need to know what we're facing. As Cooper's scout ship rejoined the fleet, the stars seemed somehow dimmer, as if the darkness he had glimpsed was already reaching across the dimensions toward them. The breach was sealed, but a greater threat was coming. And this time, They might need the Rimiki as allies, not enemies. This was just the beginning, Cooper said softly to himself as the scout ship docked with the Dauntless. The real battle hasn't even started yet.